Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. One of my New Year's resolutions in 2024 was that I needed to speak up for myself more, and I've been doing that. In fact, I started a new job late recently, and even the first day, I really did try to speak up for myself. I learned one thing the hard way, though, when I do speak up for myself. A lot of times, when people make a mistake and they say something to me that doesn't work, and I speak up for myself, and later on, I go back on what the person said and speak up against it. A lot of times, the person who said it denies the whole thing almost, and it caused me to make a fool of myself. I've kind of learned the hard way, especially in the workplace setting, but even outside of the workplace as well. So, for example, I might be discussing something with a colleague, with a boss, and their idea could use some suggestion, right? I make those suggestions. Later on, when I try to bring back, hey, maybe that wasn't the best idea, the person will deny even making it. I don't want to talk about my workplace, but I want to talk about a couple other places where I ran into this. I had a difficulty at I was going to a bowling alley. Actually, this happened on New Year's night, and I even recorded a video about it. And for some bizarre reason, the security guard had a difficulty with me and asked me to leave. And the way he asked it made me very uncomfortable, and I asserted myself. And he said he was going to call the police, and I told him, please call the police. And long story short, the thing got a little bit overheated, and I decided to leave anyway. But a couple of days later, after I had composed myself, and presumably the security guard had also composed himself, he got Donald Trump from that job, fired from that job. I call it Donald Trumping somebody. He got fired from that job, and I had called the bowling alley to make sure everything was up and up. I didn't know he had been fired at that point, so I called to make sure everything was good and maybe find out when would be a good time to come when somebody else is working there, right? And the bowling alley staff completely was in denial about the whole situation ever happening at all. It was like, what are you talking about? This never happened. I mean, they didn't say it that way. But that's not an unusual occurrence for me when I do try to speak up for myself. I was at, we have a county fair that comes here from time to time. And I have a difficulty with that a lot. They have rides that require two people, which is fine if that's for a safety reason. What I have a big problem with is that the county fair people are unwilling to put people together. They just don't want people to show up alone, right? And so every time I go there, I sometimes I try to make a minor scene, as anybody riding with you, just to show the county fair, maybe the wisdom of making it more friendly for people who come alone to access, right? Then I would go home and call them to make the suggestion, right? And then they would be like, "Oh, our employees would never do something like that," right? Yeah, if I go there 5 times and every time I have to make a scene, I find it hard to believe that 5 different sets of operators that I see on 5 different occasions would make the same mistake, right? And the people I complain to always deny that it goes on. Sometimes whether I complain over the phone or through an email, it's the same result. I can dig out my recent email to them and see what they said. But what I experience and the response I get from the complaint are incongruent, right? Just like at the bowling alley, right? It which is they know they're in the wrong, right? If they didn't think they were in the wrong and they didn't want me in the bowling alley, they wouldn't forget about it, right? And it's just unfortunate when I do try to speak up for myself. It happens at work too, right? I complain about something, and if the person I'm complaining about knows they're in the wrong, they deny it, they downplay it, and so it's very discouraging to the next time I attempt to speak up for myself. And I learned the hard way at work when untoward things happen, the document is what, as soon as I leave the boss's office, hey, this is what you suggested I do. I'm going to think about this later on if I come up with a better idea to then document that as well. Right. I've learned the hard way. I have to do it that way. Otherwise, nobody will ever acknowledge. They'll say, where did you listen to that? I never said that. Right. It's unfortunate. I really hate to behave that way at work. I wish I could trust people. It causes work to lose its fun when I have to do that. Right. It loses its fluidity. What should have been a dream job becomes an exercise in defense, right? How do I defend myself? I hate defensive work. I really do. I really do. All right. So have you ever spoken up or complained about something only to have the situation be completely denied? I had another experience like that. I was at a trivia event. It was held at a sports bar. I was there to see a friend. And again, the owner was very upset that I wasn't ordering any food there. I have food allergies. There's nothing there I can order. And I offered to tip him $10 anyway. Hey, here's a $10 tip. There's really nothing I can eat here. And he was upset about it. He asked me to leave anyway, even though I was going to give him a $10 tip. He only backed down when some of the other people there mentioned that they also had family members with similar conditions. And later on, a couple nights later, I go back to apologize to him and to explain further about my issue, and also to find out if there really was. The only reason I didn't order anything that particular night, it was busy. I didn't have time to sit down with him to find out what food would be suitable. I didn't want to take up his time. So 2 days later, when it wasn't so busy, I went back to explain my situation and to find out for future reference if there was anything safe to order. And he pretty much denied the whole thing ever happened. He was like, "Oh, when did I see you?" He understood what food allergies were. He understood what autism is and why I have to eat. He denied he ever had the sentiment he had 2 nights earlier. Again, it's just very discouraging when you try to speak up for yourself and that happens. But I need to remember that when people do that, they're basically resigning the game and not to get discouraged by that. It's kind of like when you're playing a really good game of backgammon and you're doing really well on the board, maybe chess, right? I used to love to get 9 queens or as many queens as I could on the board when I played chess. But unfortunately, people would resign the game before I get that far, and it was very upsetting for me, right? To have somebody deny an experience they know they were in the wrong kind of feels like that, right? This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.